Professor Bai, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're most welcome.
The theme of this year's Asian Investment Conference is Disruption Accelerated. What is the biggest disruption in China's economy we'll face in near term?
In a very near term, it's not that clear. But if we look a little bit beyond, I think there are a few things that may cause very big changes. One is that we are experimenting with digital currency. And I don't know at this moment how fast the adoption process will take. But that has the potential of having a huge impact on everything, not only on the economy, but also on society, on almost every aspect of our lives. So that's one very big potential source of disruption that I can think of. Others are probably more common with the rest of the world. For example, electronic cars. That may also change people's lives, especially when the car is taking over some of the functions of your smartphones. Mm-hmm. And also, it potentially can be automatically driven. That is another very important source of disruption in a good way. Then if we also consider negative disruptions, geopolitics is one area, but I think with the change of administration in the US, this risk is probably lowered a little bit. So that's my take. Possible disruptions.
Thank you, Professor Bai. Boosting consumer demand is a key factor in China's dual circulation plan. Given that consumer has become more cautious as a result of the pandemic, will China need to provide more stimulus to support growth?
I don't know whether we will term it stimulus. However, the government makes it clear that the government will not take sharp turns. The reason was that last year, everywhere in the world, we faced this huge negative shock. So in the face of this shock, a lot of economies spent a lot of money on everything. And so as a result, government budget deficit as a share of GDP was a record high last year, and monetary policy expansion was also very fast. So this year, we will probably slow down in both the fiscal sector and the monetary area. However, it doesn't mean it will be sharp reverse. So, for example, for budget deficit, last year it was 3.6% of GDP plus the special government bond. This year, in the government work report, the plan for the budget deficit is 3.2 instead of 3.6 plus the special bond. So do you call it a stimulus? The deficit is higher than in 2019, but lower than last year. For monetary policy, it's probably very similar. Monetary expansion is going to be slower than last year, but faster than in 2019. So I think it's a transition from a strong stimulus to a normal monetary and fiscal positions. So in this transition, it's still more accommodative than normal, but the trend is that it's becoming more normal. And as to consumer spending, I'm not sure I agree with the term that consumers are becoming more cautious. In some areas, it's just impossible for people to consume the way they did. For example, international travel was completely stopped. It's still not resumed. It's still not started. So there, Chinese people love to travel. So there, the spending is slowing down. That's understandable. However, in terms of other spending, automobile sales was very robust last year. So I don't think consumers are becoming more cautious. They are just adapting to the new environment in terms of how they consume.
Do you expect China's relationship with the U.S. to change under the current U.S. administration, and what differences should we expect?
I think one of the most important difference is that things are becoming more predictable. I think under the last administration, people were very uncertain about what's going to happen from day to day. I mean, you don't know what the next tweet will say. That may change the world. But for this administration, my sense is that the key people there are taking more. They are more deliberative when they make decisions. So that makes things easier to manage when you don't face so much sudden changes. There are still things that probably won't change very much. The China-U.S. relationship face huge difficulties in many areas. Some of the difficulties are not going away immediately, especially public opinion is difficult to have sharp turns. So politicians need to look after what the public is thinking. So maybe they want to change some policies, but they face huge political resistance to that. So the good thing is that we are going to face less uncertainty. The bad thing is that if you expect large improvement, then probably one should be more patient.
China's Consumer Price Index, CPI, experienced its first fall in 11 years at the end of 2020. How much of a risk is deflation, and what are your expectations for core inflation this year?
I don't think there is a real risk for deflation in the year of 2021. If anything, I think people expect the core inflation rate will be higher than last year. If we go back to the government work report, the target for inflation rate was set to be below 3.5. That reflects that people's expectation is not about deflation. Rather, we are probably we need to be a bit tolerant about inflation in some areas. But we don't, at this moment, we don't know where. But for commodity prices, you can see that commodity prices are going up quite strongly. Again, I don't worry about deflation.
Mm-hmm. So last question of today's interview. In what ways has the pandemic changed your approach to your work?
This event now is an example of how our work has been changed. In the past, probably we will be sitting face-to-face in person. But now we are conducting this interview online. So that's the biggest change. The good thing is that it's very convenient to go to conferences, to set up meetings. The bad thing is that it's too convenient to set up meetings. So we don't have weekends anymore. You expect a meeting all the time. It becomes so much more convenient to communicate with one another. There are positive and negative aspects of it.
Thank you for your great insights, Professor Bai.
Thank you. Thank you for the great questions.